President Donald Trump has ousted his Secretary of State Rex Tillerson and replaced him with CIA Director Mike Pompeo. News broke just hours after Tillerson returned to Washington from a trip to Africa. In a Tuesday morning tweet, President Trump thanked Tillerson for his service and announced that Pompeo would take over the job. He also said Deputy Director of the CIA, Gina Haspel, would now become chief of the agency, the first woman to hold that position. Before boarding Air Force One for his first visit to California, President Trump said he and Pompeo had a very good relationship. Trump also wished Tillerson well, saying he and Tillerson had talked about the possibility of Tillerson's departure for some time. Trump said he and Tillerson had gotten along well, but also disagreed on certain things. The president said he does not see that happening with Pompeo.
I think Mike Pompeo will be a truly great Secretary of State. I have total confidence in him. And as far as Rex Tillerson is concerned, I very much appreciate his commitment and his service, and I wish him well.
Well, Trump said he and Tillerson had a different mindset on certain things. Now, Tillerson had just returned from a 5-nation trip to Africa, which he cut short by a day to return to Washington. For more on Tillerson's exit and how that affects U.S.-Africa policy, I'm joined in studio by Stephen Herman, VOA's White House correspondent, and Melvin Foote, President and Chief Executive Officer, Constituency for Africa. Welcome, gentlemen.
Pleasure.
Now, let's start with you, Steve. First, the president said they have a difference in their mindset. Can you kind of break this down for us?
Well, I think that Tillerson's days were numbered ever since it leaked out that he had called the President of the United States a moron. Actually, there was another word before moron we won't repeat on television. And I think that the president was just looking to get everything set up, and Tillerson had to know that his days were numbered. But in a sense, this was a very humiliating way for him to go. From what we're hearing from officials at State Department, that Tillerson had no warning and heard about his firing from the president's tweet this morning.
There's some actually who had expected him to quit at some point. Is there some kind of understanding as to why he held on for this long until he gets fired?
There have also been people at State Department who said that Tillerson had decided that he would not quit. No matter what the humiliation was, he would make the president fire him.
Wow. Now, Mel, looking at the timing itself, he just returned from Africa. We were trying to read into the U.S. policy towards Africa from his trip. What do you make of this?
Well, it can't be good. I mean, from the African perspective, they got to be saying, wait a minute, is the United States serious or not? And this was a clear indication after the comment he made, the derogatory comment he made last month, that he's not serious. I wonder about the Africa Union chairperson, who had to cancel a visit to Washington a few months ago because they downgraded it here in Washington. And now you shake hands and say, okay, everything is forgiven, let's move forward. And then here we go again. So in my view, it clearly shows that Africa is not a priority for the United States. It clearly shows there's no real policy priority as of right now in terms of the administration. So it's not good.
Now, Steve, talking about the timing, what might have triggered this firing at this particular time?
Well, from what we can tell, as of yesterday, this was being discussed in the White House, that it would occur sometime this week. The Washington Post got wind of it, as did other reporters, but the Post had a story out early in the morning, and shortly after that is when the president tweeted. So they may have decided to pull the trigger on this once the story was out in the Washington Post and not let it to fester. Now, we can also look at the comment that Secretary Tillerson made about the nerve gas attack in Salisbury in the United Kingdom, where he went beyond the White House statement and clearly put the blame on Russia, where Sarah Huckabee Sanders at the briefing that we were in yesterday used words to condemn the attack, but did not point the finger at Russia, saying it was premature.
How about that case of the Tillerson kind of getting the news about the potential meeting by the president with the North Korean leader while in Africa?
Right. There's no doubt that the Secretary of State had been out of the loop on the North Korean negotiations. negotiations. And that was very much something that the president decided on his own, on the spot, when the South Koreans were in the Oval Office, without consulting his Secretary of State. But that was more of a humiliation, again, for Tillerson rather than a reason to fire him.
Now, Mel, looking forward, what do you think the Trump administration could do to kind of give that confidence that it really cares about the continent of Africa?
Well, I think that we're way behind the 8 ball. I think China has left us in the dust. I think Russia is moving really aggressively in Africa. I think I don't see a way forward, quite frankly. I don't. And I try to be optimistic about it. I try to be balanced about it.
But now the former Secretary of State, before going to Africa, said, well, we want to have a kind of a more progressive relationship with Africa. China has this kind of a different relationship which doesn't help the continent. Was it that signaling that the U.S. wants to engage in a better way?
Well, over the last, say, a decade, I've heard mixed signals. I heard that while China was building infrastructure, we're doing social programming. It's okay, it's okay. Now we're talking about security. Now we're talking about guns, military. I just think that we don't have a clue as to where we're going with Africa. I think that we're misleading Africans. We're not telling them, not even in terms of the Young African Leaders Program. We're not saying, yeah, we want to build future partnerships. I don't hear anything that says we have a good, coherent strategy relating to Africa.
Is there anything the U.S. is losing by not engaging with Africa more effectively?
I think we're losing all kinds. I think we're losing market share. I think we're losing future world relationships. I think we're losing climate change initiatives. I think we're losing globally. Healthcare security, I think we're losing globally.
Now, Steve, finally, with this exit, people kind of expect others to happen someday. How is the atmosphere like? What do you hear in terms of people working around the White House and for the president?
Well, the president is very confident, feels that he should be in charge of all the initiatives, that people should follow his orders, his direction, and that with Tillerson's leaving, we could now see a number of other people leaving as well, that the president feels emboldened with taking this move, that he may also want to remove some other senior personnel as well.
Right. Final word in 10 seconds.
Yeah, I agree. Ditto.
All right. So we'll wait and see and how things play out in the coming days. Gentlemen, I want to thank you very much, Steve and Mel.
Thank you.
All right. Well, do appreciate Steve Herman, VOA's White House correspondent, and Melvin Foote, who's the president and chief executive officer, Constituency for Africa.